I write to you from my childhood cafe. It is the only place I've ever truly felt safe. The hole I have dug for myself in this life has become so deep I can no longer climb out. I only pray you will pay heed to my words. One summer when I was young and bored, I thought I would toy with the mind. I delved into meditation and would practice in the many hours I had to kill. I could hone my mind with such precision that I nearly frightened myself. Searching for more, I played with the realm of sleep. Somehow I didn't want much to do with lucid dreaming, and instead quickly became obsessed with astral projection. Many people don't believe in the ability to leave your body, but I did. Maybe it's not so strange. A young girl just entering puberty would seek a method of escape. I blame other things on that youthful immaturity, like my ignorance. It wasn't that I believed nothing could hurt me, it was that I believed I could protect myself. I'd done my research, but I was meek. And so I practiced. Every day I'd put my body to sleep and keep my mind awake and try, nearly beg my consciousness to slip out. Sometimes I felt close. Mostly I didn't. Then one day it happened. No, there was no grand departure. Instead, it first became dark. My eyes were closed, mind you, so it was already pitch black. But this dark wasn't an absence. It was a presence in itself. Then there was pressure. I thought perhaps it was sleep paralysis, but I soon realized this pressure wasn't on my chest or abdomen. It was on my mind, on my consciousness. It was stifling. I couldn't think, only react internally, and I began to descend. Do you know that feeling of falling off a skyscraper right before you fall asleep, followed by violently jerking awake? It was that, but I never woke up. The falling began to feel like pulling, while this pressure threatened not to suffocate, but to shatter me. I thought I was dying. It felt as though I was being driven into the core of the earth. And with the intensifying summer heat, I would have believed it if my mother did not come wake me up. I stirred, uneasy but immediately relieved of what seemed to be my impending doom. We were renovating. Well, only in my room. You see, my sister had outgrown her crib. It was time for a bunk bed. I'd had the same bed since I was about 6 years old, so it was like saying goodbye to an old friend, but was also refreshing. I initially thought nothing of my old set sitting outside in pieces, but as the sun began to set on the new wooden tower residing in my room, something felt wrong. I scanned every niche from the doorway, unsure. There's a certain dread, an instinctual anxiety wired into us that goes off when something is just not right. Now my entire room felt that way. Every single time I walked in. Even now I can only describe what began in my room and that something was disturbed. I'm not sure what or why exactly, but it did not like the change of switching beds. And it only got worse. I couldn't stand to be alone in my room for very long, especially at night. I drew my curtains, shut my closet, and trained myself to sleep only facing the wall. I put salt on my windows, tried imagining myself surrounded by a bright white light, which was especially difficult. It was always so dim or would flicker. I even tried talking out loud to whatever was there, telling it I wouldn't stand to be afraid. I wasn't overly religious, but my grandmother was. So I took her Bible and slept with it under my pillow for 2 weeks. It provided brief solace, but whatever was there was pending behind that thin line. My family thought I was overreacting. Even I wondered if I was. This continued for the rest of my summer into the beginning of the school year, and it intensified until my room was almost audibly throbbing with this presence. Then the voices began. I woke up one morning for school, having shut my alarm off. I lay there, physically lethargic but mentally alert. I felt the same dread, and thought to myself, it's always there. and it answered me.
Of course we are.
The most inhuman, guttural growl I have ever heard, muttered directly into my ear. This was followed by a heat radiating over my face, as if it had a breath. Facing the wall, I did not turn around. It said other things, placing a sickening coyness behind its voice. But from that first response, it was as though I was in a trance, completely numb to the ordeal. I heard the commotion of the early morning in my household, and got up to follow suit. Only later in the day did I experience some kind of delayed fearful response. An internet search turned up hypnopompic hallucinations, those which occur upon awakening. It was nice to think that it was as innocent as that, but I am here writing to you. Thus, this period of my life was marked by what many would deem a psychotic episode. I began to hear that voice occasionally during the day, interjecting a thought or conversation I was having. This was all accompanied by constant physical and emotional lethargy, depression, and paranoia. There was incessant movement in my peripheral vision. Walking home was sometimes torturous. I would repeatedly catch something in the corners of my eyes. Too short to be a lamppost, too tall to be a human. Nights became darker, and I could never stay up until 3 in the morning. Yet I never came face to face with a damn thing. Maybe that's for the better. Maybe I couldn't have handled it. When I finally broke, this episode ended as quickly as it came. I was taking a nap in the middle of the day one weekend, having a nightmare. I don't even remember exact details, just that I was being chased. There was the normal escalation of a night terror, and at its climax I jolted awake. But my dream still pursued me. It seemed like sleep paralysis again, but whatever had caught me in the dream now had me by the head. It was so strong, and I felt that familiar pressure as it shoved me farther into my pillow. It seemed to be whispering, but I soon realized there were several indiscernible whispers, and they began to grow louder. The whole incident was so much more corporeal than the last. I couldn't breathe. My head was nearly in pain. The whispers were maddening. I was sure it was going to crush my skull, and in a desperate moment I began to pray. Again, I wasn't really religious. I believed in God passively because it was instilled into me, but I attached little to the name. Yet in that moment, the whispers died down as the grip loosened. The whole thing was over remarkably fast. I sat up and cried. Then I began attending church with my grandmother. I never told her or anyone a word of this. I couldn't even be sure it wasn't some sort of placebo, but I didn't really care. One by one, my plagues left me. No more lethargy, no more clouds perpetually hanging over me. No more suspicious movement just out of my line of sight. I was cured. In fact, I didn't really think much about it for years. I was still wary, of course. If I got a bad vibe from a location, I avoided it. If people mentioned exploring the paranormal, I counted myself out. It was behind me. I grew up, experienced the ups and downs of life. I kept my faith. I'm not sure what got into me. I guess you could say life did. One too many straws, a dead father, a lost job, a tarnished marriage. I cursed at the sky, spat upon the church, and abandoned my community to wallow in my misery alone. We both know you have your regrets. Of mine, this is my ultimate. I regret it more than the first attempt to project many summers ago. Last night I dreamed of that long-gone bunk bed in my old dreadful room. I was laying down, albeit restlessly, getting up to draw my curtains and shut my closet door. I became lightheaded, as the entire room moved much like a descending elevator. I think there is something waiting for me. Perhaps it will be sitting patiently on the edge of my bed when I get home. But this time, in this hole I've dug so deep, there is no one to call upon, and no one to cast a rope.